not something that is created. And get one thing straight. When we talk about spending, whether it's Republicans or Democrats that spend on behalf of the American people, we rarely do anything other than talk about costs. We don't talk about benefits. And so toward that end, I would only use two, and I have a considerable list of areas that I could address that the Democrats have spent money on. And I would ask any of our colleagues, do they feel that we should not have spent $31 billion in science, technology, innovation, math education, cutting-edge research, and advanced manufacturing technologies and workforce training? That was passed by the House of Representatives. I would ask my friends, is there anything about national security troops and veterans that they would not have spent on? The fiscal year supplemental for the rest of 2009 provides our troops with everything they need to wind down the war that we shouldn't have been in the first place, Iraq, and change the strategy in Afghanistan, requiring a progress report and making retroactive payments to 185,000 plus service members whose enlistments were involuntarily extended since 9/11 or 9/11. That was signed into law. Would they not have spent that money? Would they not have spent the money expanding the new GI Bill benefits to cover the full cost of college education for all children of fallen United States service members? That was signed into law. Would they not have spent the money on a 3.4% raise for our troops, strengthening military readiness, expanding support for military families such as health care and housing, focusing on our strategy in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and redeployment from Iraq and military procurement reform? That was signed into law. Would they not have spent the money on one of our top priorities of veterans groups, authorizing Congress to approve VA medical care appropriations 1 year in advance to ensure reliable and timely funding and prevent politics from ever delaying VA health care funding? That was signed into law. Would they not have spent the money on strengthening quality health care for more than 5 million veterans by investing 15% more than 2009 for medical care benefits, claims, processes, and facility improvements? That was passed by the House, and I could go on the entire 15 minutes on that. But let me go to where I digress from. Richard Nixon created during his administration and received credit for, and that's what these presidents do, the creation of 9.4 million jobs. Under President Ford, under strenuous circumstances, his administration was credited with creating 1.8 million jobs. Under President Reagan coming in with a near identical, in many respects, absent 911 footnote right there. When my colleague mentions Katrina, I'm sure he knows that we haven't finished what's needed to be done with reference to the people on the Gulf Coast and specifically in the city of New Orleans. But to President Reagan's credit, and during his administration, and whatever tax decreases or however else it was achieved, I can assure you that the exact number are 16 million jobs. Under President Bush, George H.W., 2.5 million jobs. Under Bill Clinton, 23.1 million jobs. Under President Bush and my friend from Texas's majority Congress that at one point had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, under his administration, taking into consideration everything that he has talked about, 3 million jobs. The worst track record on record. Now, what's needed here, Mr. Speaker, and straightforward accounting and not the off-budget stuff that I have heard here during the period of time that I'm here and that I heard from my colleague. What this bill will do and what this rule permits us to discuss is not off-budget kind of accounting. It's sort of like the same kind of off-budget accounting that Wall Street does, that my friends on the other side seem to think that we should do. No, fair and straightforward accounting. My good friend from California that I served with him on the Africa subcommittee when he was in the majority, we traveled together, an outstanding person and congressperson. But when he came in here, he described that accountants say this is a moral hazard. I'll tell you what a moral hazard is. A moral hazard is putting wars off budget and not being prepared to pay for them and not asking the American people to make the necessary sacrifices in order that all of us, rich and poor, black and white, conservative and liberal, will pay our fair share to protect this great country of ours. Enough of all this doom talking and finger pointing. What is needed is a great consensus for all of us to be able to go forward, to straighten out our nation, and we can do this, and I believe that we will. One of the primary culprits of this current recession was a regulatory system that looked out for the wealth of Wall Street firms rather than the security of average American consumers. This legislation, however, recognizes that the strength of our financial system is not measured simply by the value of the Dow Jones. It's measured by the prosperity of the American people. One of my friends, Phil Hare, who is here, says it ain't the GDP, it's the JOB. And I believe Mr. Sessions, KNOW, what I'm talking about, with an S. Our constituents deserve to know that they are not going to be taken advantage of by the institutions in which they have entrusted their financial security. They deserve to know that our financial regulations will stop those institutions who engage in irresponsible practices without placing an unnecessary burden on those who are acting in the best interest of their consumers. And they deserve to know that this Congress, Republican and Democrat, should not, and I believe the Democrats will not, stand idly by allowing monstrous financial institutions to put our entire economy at risk, rake in billions, and shell out egregious bonuses while everyday Americans lose their life savings and struggle from paycheck to paycheck. The Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, and we should give Barney Frank and the Financial Services Committee, Republican and Democrat, every credit for extraordinary work in these extremely difficult times for our country. But this Protection Act makes reasonable and responsible changes to our financial regulatory system and enacts long-needed consumer protections. After months of debate, countless hearings, and votes on this very floor, this rule will finally allow for its complete and timely consideration. Mr. Speaker, I urge a yes